Hello, 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 hello. This is Pastor Lan again, Light 360, coming to you live from the city of Chicago. This is our first broadcast for this week, and I am so excited about what is in store for us this week and what is in store for us today. So I want to welcome you, people joining us right now. I want to welcome you from YouTube, from Facebook, Twitter, and we're going to be on Instagram in a short moment now. So I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. I hope your week has been going great. Beginning of the week, but hopefully it's been going great. So this is Light 360. And as I always like to do, I like to reiterate the purpose of Light 360. Someone said that when purpose is not known, abuse is inevitable. So one of the things that we have to keep doing is to keep sharing the why of everything that we do, because when we get the why, then we can get every other thing, that follows. So why Light 360? So this show is set up for this purpose, to enable you, empower you to shine brighter as a light for Christ in your sphere of influence. And we do that through instructions, but mostly we do that through the stories of other people that we have identified that are shining as lights in their spheres of influence already. So we look around. That's where the 360 comes from, 360 degrees. So we have our eyes all around. We're looking at, Chicagoland. We're looking at even other nations. We're looking everywhere. And we're just trying to pick out, whose story will be inspiring for our audience, who is living this, Christ life, this kingdom life, and, just, glorifying God in their sphere of influence. So we bring them on. Some of them will come, they tell their stories, what they do. Some of them will come with the work they produce, maybe a book or something, that music. We've had musicians on, we've had business people on, pastors, and just in different spheres of influence. And the goal is that, as they share their stories and as we interact and talk together and just share, that you will be inspired, and maybe something, a nugget or so, a snippet or something from their stories or from what they share will inspire you so that you can run your race and be a light for Christ as he has called us to be in our spheres of influence. So I want to welcome everyone joining us. So thank you so much for joining us. I want to ask that you please join us in the conversation. Join us in the conversation wherever you're watching from. If you want to post it there where you're watching from right now, that's always great to see. Please post it in there in the chat for us to see, the places where our audience is watching from. And so feel free to comment. Feel free. At the end, we're going to have a time for you to question our guests, to ask questions and to make comments. Well done, Jephthah from Zambia. Great to see you. Great to see you. Awesome, Jephthah. I know it's very late in Zambia now, but you're staying up, but it's awesome to see you and to have you join us. So let's know where you're watching from. So I will be bringing on our guests because I want us to be able to, spend enough time. Welcome, Pastor Jonathan. Great to see you. Great to see you. So, well, we have a guest today. He's a very good friend of mine. I got to know him, really well in the past few years, and he's just a cool guy. He's a nice, nice body. Somebody that you want in your corner, anywhere you are, and he has such a powerful story. So his name is Scott Parker. Scott Parker is his name. And I'm just going to introduce him, just a little bit of his bio. So Scott Parker graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Radio, Television, Film from Northwestern University. So I'm sure that as he's looking at this show right now, he say, what an amateur show this is, he's probably analyzing everything. It's like, this guy is not a professional broadcaster. So I need to learn from, Scott Parker. So from Northwestern University, that's one of the top, 5 or so universities in the United States that he graduated from. And then he moved into the Rogers Park area of Chicago, and he has lived there. That's over 30 years ago, that he has lived in Rogers Park. Now, for you to live somewhere 30 years, you must have a mission. And we're going to be talking about that on this show today. For 30 years, he was a founder and the executive director of Starfish Studios, a movie-making discipleship program with children and youth from across the city. So he's a movie maker that we have on today. He's also the owner in charge of Change Media Group, a media production and video services company. His clients have included the Chicago Police Department, University of Chicago, Northwestern University, Purdue University, TIP at Loyola University, the Common Ground Foundation, and the Total Living Network. So you see, this is a professional guy, okay? He has taught media workshop in partnership with London Community Church, Firehouse Community Health Center, Breakthrough Urban Ministries, the Howard Area Community Center. But now he's a pastor. That's his story that he has to tell us. How you went from being the media producer to becoming a pastor. I think I'm trying to go the other way now. Try to move from pastor to media producer. So maybe you tell me, how to go in the other direction, today. So he's currently the pastor at Park Community Church, church's Rogers Park, North Rogers Park location. He has been instrumental in organizing the Chicago United in Prayer, Chicagoland United in Prayer, Citywide Prayer, and Northeast Regional Morning Prayer Watch, as well as Night Church. That's interesting. We're going to talk about that. Response to Murder and the Rogers Park Youth Alliance. He's currently developing a deep dive discipleship curriculum called Master's Mind, which focuses on specific topics like ending poverty, biblical wholeness, and the Lord's Prayer. He has been married to Moon Kwon Parker for 18 years. His wife is such a wonderful, beautiful soul, Noah, and has 2 boys, Elijah and Uriah. So, guys, we have someone today that I believe his story, his life experience is going to be a blessing, a real blessing to you. So, when I moved to the Rogers Park area, we were exploring a church plant in the Rogers Park area. It was one of those people that I called, and I remember, him coming over to meet me and giving me the lay of the land, 30 years experience, and this is where you got to go, this is where the restaurant, this is where this is, these are the churches, these are this and that and that and that. So we did a kind of community analysis sitting there. I just love him. I love his wife. I love his family, and I love his art and the work that he's doing. So please, without any much ado, let's welcome to Light 360, Scott Parker.
Hey,
Scott.
Dr. Lang.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. This is quite an honor, man.
So glad to have you on. Yeah, so, wow. What's going on today? How are you doing today? Good?
I'm doing good. I'm actually working on a video today for my Loyola client. He does something called transforming impossible into possible. It's in like a psychological self-sufficiency curriculum.
Okay.
It's super powerful, cool stuff. So
awesome. Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. So you like working on videos? You like it?
I do sometimes. I I mostly like doing what you're doing right now, which is
Okay. So being
doing,
on the other side of the video, I mean, like, you know,
doing the interviews and
yeah.
hearing people's stories. It's weird for me to be on the other side of that. So I might try to start asking you about your story, like to feel more comfortable. Yeah, but the editing's hard for me. The editing part is hard. That's what I'm doing right now today. So yeah.
Wow. Awesome, awesome. You know, we're gonna, just get your expertise. You know, we have some great news that we're gonna be sharing about this show. I'm gonna keep it to myself for now, but there's
Okay.
something amazing that is about to happen about our reach that we're working on the ground. We're actually soon gonna be able to take it, beyond social media to actually reach some continents through studios that actually reach people within the continent. So that is underground, but I'll keep it to myself for now. People just keep people guessing. So we're gonna need your help with that.
Oh wow, yeah.
With that, yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, awesome. So Scott, we just read your bio, and that's a very powerful bio. But we usually like to go to the beginning
Uh,
at Light 360, just for people to see how did it all start. So tell us about yourself, a little bit about your background. How did it all begin?
yeah, I always say that I got saved because my grandma's I think parents died, and she had to move in with cousins, and she came to faith, and she passed that faith on to my mother, who taught me from the moment I was born. It was
Yeah, Timothy. Now. Yeah, like Timothy, right?
yeah, exactly. So I grew up like knowing that the sky was blue, the grass was green, and that Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins, man. When I was like 4 or 5 years old, my parents were part of a Lutheran church in close to Lansing, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad, who was a salesman, got really involved with evangelism explosion. And so they were doing door-to-door evangelism, and he loved it.
Mm-hmm.
So he practiced the script on me. So when I was about 5 or 6 years old, he asked me if I were to die that night and stand before God. And he asked me, why should I let you into heaven? What would you say? And
so you got scared, right? Is that what happened to you?
Yeah. I mean, it was like, whoa, like die, go to heaven, what, and boy, it really made an impression on me. And so I, like from the time I was little, I was wanting to share that message with everybody. I didn't want anybody not to go to heaven, right?
Yeah.
But that was a very powerful church. It was Lutheran. I don't know if you're familiar with Lutheran churches, but they're very similar to Catholic churches, and they're high church. It's stand up, sit down when the pastor tells you, right? But this church was really on fire, real sense of God's presence at this church. I mean, the pastor there, like he would, like one Sunday he put a coffin at the front of the church and had everybody walk by the coffin. In the coffin was a mirror. And he asked everybody, are you ready to die? I mean, like this guy, Pastor Richards, was like really crazy. And I can remember when I was really little being at some sort of church event. We were singing, I have decided to follow Jesus. And I experienced like the presence of the Holy Spirit. And that never left me. That ability to kind of come into God's presence and to seek him out and to know him, as my best friend, and like was with me all my life. So I was one of those kids that like God really was the most important thing to me. It wasn't like other things weren't important, and I wasn't perfect by any means, but God had my heart, you know, definitely had my heart from a very, very young age. So that's kind of
Awesome.
the beginning for me. Yeah.
Wow. That's good. It's great to be saved at at a very young age. I got saved not as young as you were. I got saved at the age of 15. And just like you, I was scared into the kingdom of God too. You know, I read a book about hell and heaven. I was like, no, I don't want to go to hell. I want to go to heaven. So that's how I became a Christian. And after I just couldn't stop telling people about it, you know. And that has led, gradually to what I do right now. Because I actually started ministering and actually leading at the age of 16. That's 30 something years ago, right now. And has been continuous since then. Either planting a church or join, just that's the way it's been. There's a way that, something just happens in your life and you just can't stop telling people about it, right? The message just keeps burning. It's like fire in your bones that you have to tell it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, that was my experience.
Yeah. Well, so which part of the United States was this? Or were you born in Canada or were you born in Australia?
No. Like when I was real little, we were in Lansing, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
It's the capital of Michigan. And then we moved to the Grand Rapids area, to a small town called Middleville.
Okay.
It's hard to believe with a name like Middleville that it was a small town, but it was a small town. It was one traffic light, cornfield behind our high school. Students came from about a 40-mile radius, if you can imagine. So not Chicago, man, not anything like the city. So.
Okay, awesome. So tell us, move us a little bit further in your journey. So how did you got saved and you started speaking, doing all that. How did that lead to, between then and Northwestern, who were the early influences in your life and all that, apart from your mom?
Yeah. So I think that I think when I was about 12 years old, I decided I want to be an actor for whatever reason. And so that was kind of my dream. I think because we watched a lot of TV, I just thought that was that's where the most influence was. I think that's what it was. And so I had this idea I was going to make like movies for Jesus, right? And so I was kind of really after that, I got cast in the lead my freshman year of high school, and so that kind of led me to want to go to Northwestern, because they were one of the best theater companies, best communication universities in the country, and so applied to there, got in, got enough financial aid that it was all right for us to go, and that brought me to Chicago really for the first time. I'd never really been to a big city or anything like that, and so the vision was to make Christian movies that were marketable. That's what I was trying to do. I quickly got involved with campus ministries. I did a lot of sketch comedy stuff for those ministries. I was trying to start an artist group. I started writing, so one of the most significant moments in my high school life was I had this dream of being an actor. So when I was 15 years old, my dad drove me into Grand Rapids, the big city for us was Grand Rapids, and I mean second biggest city in Michigan, and there was a community theater there. They don't really have professional theater in Grand Rapids, so there was this community theater, and I went in and I auditioned. They do auditions for the whole season. So every show that they do auditions, and so you go from one director to another doing auditions.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting called back for a play called Master Harold and the Boys. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's by a South African playwright named Ethel Fugard, and it's about a white kid and kind of his father relationship with the family servant Sam, who's black, right? And so I auditioned for that part, and it really grabbed me. And I kept auditioning, and then the guy directing it, he was like like this big shot director from Detroit, and he called me back, and they wanted to cast me in it, but he said, we got to talk to your parents because there's a couple scenes, that we would need your parents' permission. But I noticed in the audition that I had to take the Lord's name in vain, and so they said he wants to cast you in this play, and I was like, I need to pray about whether I can take the Lord's name in vain. The other stuff I'm not too worried about, but that I'm a Christian at school, and and it was the first time in my life I can remember God really like almost audibly speaking to me. I was praying about it, walking down back and forth in my hallway, and I felt God say, if you do this, I'm going to take everything I gave you away from you. I like put the fear of God in me. I did, and so I got on the phone with this guy, and it wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was, but I thought like I'm missing out my shot for Hollywood, right? But I told this guy I can't do it. And right afterwards, they cast me in a different lead, and it, Pastor Alon, what happened was the lead, the guy who was playing Sam in that play, he ended up dying of AIDS halfway through the rehearsal process. Wow. And it turned into a nightmare. I don't know if I would have even been able to finish it. And then I ended up in this other play as the lead in another play. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. And so that really kind of set my face like flint, that if I was going to be in this industry, I was going to do it for the glory of God.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I landed at Northwestern, was with that in my heart and my mind. So yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So that good that you mentioned that story where you had to take your stand, because I know in that area, field, that sphere of movies, entertainment, and all that, that's one of those major things. There's compromise. Like you have to deny some things or whatever. They won't let you do this, or you can't go forward. Could you speak to somebody in the audience who maybe is going through that right now? They might not be in the movie industry and all that, but they know that they have an idea of what they're trying to accomplish, what the direction they feel God is leading them, but there's somebody standing or some kind of standard and all that they have to either bow, or burn, like Daniel and the 4 Hebrew children. Can you speak to them from your own experience? How should they address that?
Yeah, so that's real important to me. What was interesting is in that particular case, I turned a part down and ended up with an equal opportunity that, put me on the front page of the newspaper, and it was one of the coolest experiences of my life. But when I landed in Northwestern, I auditioned for a couple plays, and quickly was kind of like, oh, man, you know what? I don't see most of this theater glorifying God. And so I kind of took a similar stance at Northwestern, which was hard because, you know, the Northwestern is cranked out like almost, I feel like 25% of who you see on television, man, like huge names come from Northwestern.
Isn't that's where Megan, what's her name, the Duchess of, she's also a Northwestern product.
Oh, okay, yeah. But I mean, Stephen Colbert went there.
Yeah.
Seth Meyers was in a sketch comedy writing team with me when I was at Northwestern, you know. And so you really feel it there, this sort of like this is where if you get noticed, it could take you somewhere. And I just had a real heart to reach, you know, fellow theater people. It's kind of a long way to get to the answer of your question, but I really struggled for a long time because, you know, what God ended up calling me to was you know, inner city Chicago. You know, he and I was making movies, you know, but I kind of always had in the back of my mind, one day God's gonna lift me up, you know, to be a Steven Spielberg level director, right? Like I put it in God's hands, you know. And it never happened. It never happened. Now maybe it still will, but there was a real long period of time, you know, when I started Starfish Studios, the dream was to do workshops with kids and then create professional movies during the summer that would be marketed and go to screen. But you know, one thing they don't teach you in school is how to raise the $1 million that you need to make a movie, right? And I never. And in Chicago, you know, there's a reason we don't have very many film directors that make it in Chicago, because the people that finance things in Chicago don't know anything about film, and so they're very hesitant to ever invest in a movie project. And that's not just my problem. That's a Chicago problem. But this is where God called me to be.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, like, kind of during this one season of my life, feeling very discouraged that nothing was working in terms of my film career, right? Which was pretty much non-existent. And seeing Seth Meyers on the cover of Time magazine right after he grabbed the Tonight Show, and just feeling like what in the world? Like I was like this super high achiever, like, you know, and it took me about 5 years for God to kill that. And that's why the story of the disciples really means a lot to me, because I realized that when Jesus died on the cross, all their dreams for who they thought they were going to be died too. You know, they had thought, man, we got picked up by the Messiah, by the Christ, right? Like he, you know, we're going to be in the Oval Office, you know, like, you know, and not for 4 years, but, you know, till the day we die, because that's how I'm told back then, right? We're going to be the next, you know, Roman Empire, right? And then Jesus is killed by the Roman Empire, right? And so they had to die to, and that's what God really took me through. He took me through dying. And I think overachievers, sometimes there's a reason we're like that. Like we somehow at a certain point in our young lives decide, if I accomplish a tremendous amount of things, I will be somebody, right?
Yeah.
And we have to be very careful. Like God is a jealous God, man. He doesn't want you to be somebody for any other reason than you're his kid.
Yes.
And so I think that's a big part of my story, actually.
Wow.
But you know what, Pastor Lan, like what we're a part of now, you and me and Doc Feuer and all these pastors that are coming together across the city.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it to I wouldn't trade it to be sitting where, you know, Seth Meyers is sitting. I literally can say that now today, you know, because I really, when you think about eternity and the kingdom of God and being able to be a part of what God is doing on the earth, you know, like nothing compares to that, you know? And it took me about 30 years, but God got my heart there, you know? And there is a real liberty, a real freedom, and knowing that my only job today is to get up in the morning, spend time with God, and do what He has for me to do that day. And how accomplished I am in a worldly sense or in a kingdom sense or whatever is completely in His hands. Completely in His hands.
Powerful.
And there's so much freedom in that. And I think that that's what the world is looking for, man. Because the world just doesn't do it. It doesn't do it. Like, you know. Yeah.
You know, I just wanted to, you know, really, really, like, how do I say, confirm or affirm what you just said with a story in my own life too, because it seems that we went through similar stuff. So, of course, I grew up in Africa, grew up in Lagos, Nigeria, but from the time I was young, there was something that God gave me. He gave me, like, you know, what you would call smarts, like very
yeah.
You know, like I always knew above all my mates. I always studied beyond, and I was always the best around, academically and all that. In leadership, people, you know, always look forward to me. I won awards. God gave me like insight into different areas of life, like science, poetry, and all that. And those things started showing up from my mom. I saw my mom is watching, you know.
Yeah.
From that, those things started showing up from when I was very young, and I became like, you know, I had notoriety in the state, and all that. And then into college, my nickname was Einstein, that they used to call me in college, in university. All my friends called me that because I had come up with theories that I did not even know. You know, for example, the not the special theory of relativity, but what's the other one again? The general theory of relativity. I sat down. I did not even know Einstein or anything. I sat down and I came up with that theory, and I was showing it to my friends when we were in college. That's when, you know, we're studying Einstein. I was like, wow, this is what I came up with by just doing maths and thinking and all that. So that was my nickname. But going back, you know, I got saved, right? And then, you know, 1990, I was sitting down just reading, and I was reading a book called The 7 Great Prayer Warriors. And then I hear the voice of God, just like you said, you know, and it tells me that I'm calling you to be like these people that you are reading about. So a worldwide ministry, that's the way he said it then. I was so young, but it was so clear and everything. And that began the struggle. And so I ran from that call for 2 years. I didn't want to go that route. I wanted to go my route of science and all this stuff and everything. And then until a particular day, I read a book in 1992 called The Man God Uses. About you laying down your life, your future, and everything, and just laying it out before God. Let God become the driver of your car, and you be in the driver's seat. Let Him become, you know, the pilot, you know, captain of your ship. You sit down, that you become somebody who is now sailing under sealed orders. You don't know where it's going to go. So somehow God got me to that point where I made that consecration. And for some time, I felt some pinch of regret. I still went on to study engineering, electronics engineering, and all that. But while I was doing it, my heart was in ministry and reaching out, and I started pastoring and reaching out at that time. And so I went that route and everything and left that behind. So after leaving college and everything and doing that and all the different things that have happened and everything, I look back at my life and just looking back 30 something years ago. And just like you said, I will not trade it for anything, because my life is, I would say, several times richer, better than if I had gone my own route. But there was another thing that happened along the line. As I was doing that, God began to restore to me things that I thought, I lost. He just wanted me, just like, he did with Abraham when he wanted him to lay down Isaac, right? But he didn't really want him to kill Isaac, right? Yeah. So I think I'm speaking this to you too, that thing was something that God, like, I want to be there, was something that God wanted you to lay down, but he's not asking you to kill it, because that gift, he gave it to you, and that passion, and within what we're doing right now, and even beyond that, I just have that feeling that God has something for you to produce, to do those things that he gave you when you were young. Because that's what happened to me, because God now began to tell me the reason why I loved all those things and began to incorporate it now into the different things that I do, which led to my PhD and other stuff and all this, things. So and God is restoring it back, so he didn't want me to kill Isaac. He just wanted me to lay down Isaac.
Right.
Then he asked the ram that he was going to, provide. So I just wanted to say that, and to anybody that is watching too.
Yeah.
God is asking you to do it. You got to do it, because I just thank God for, his blessing, family. I mean, the journeys, the nations, the different places that God has allowed me to be, stages, and just people I've met. And I just thank God, because I wouldn't have experienced that if I'd gone to my own way. I'll probably be somewhere, locked up somewhere. But I thank God for the life right now. But I know that God has something, you understand? So they're telling you, so you can't kill it, Scott. You're not allowed to kill it. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Well, I when I say kill it, I don't mean the dream. Like, if God gives that back, fine. If he doesn't, that's okay too. What I mean is the part of me that thought I needed that to be important.
Yes.
That's what needed to die, right? Like, because, God wants to give you something, but he doesn't want to give you over to it, right? Yeah. Right. You can own the dream, but he never wants the dream to own you. Yeah. And I think, I might have been a little less healthy than other people. I don't know. And I still don't know, but I had a moment when I was in my 30s, or not even, like, in my 20s. So guy called me to the inner city. I was working with homeless guys. I basically run a homeless shelter out of my apartment. I had, like, people kept giving me couches, and I kept having homeless guys staying with me. And it was just a super adventure, man. My first 5 years in the neighborhood was like I could write a book, and it was super exciting. But at the same time, my church didn't know what to do with me. And so they were like, why is this Northwestern guy broke and living like a missionary? And, he could be getting a job in supporting the church, I don't know what they were thinking. But I was discipling these guys, basically praying with them every morning at Northwestern. So I'd walk from Rogers Park to Northwestern to pray with these guys. And one morning, God I got to there's a place at Northwestern, in the center of the campus. It's called The Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And God brought me there. It's about 6 a.m. And he said, I want you to worship.
Mm.
So I just started singing. I was feeling a little bit self-conscious, you know, just started to worship. And then I really got hit with the presence of God. And I knew I was supposed to get on my face before the Lord, prostrate. You know, if anyone walked by, it probably looked like I was worshiping this rock. You know, I wasn't. But I was on the ground. And it was really when I was really in the midst of struggling with this. And also struggling with the fact that like my church wasn't acknowledging me. I wasn't invited to any of the leaders' meetings, all this kind of stuff. You know, it was really hard for an overachiever to be like not have any position, whatever, right? But I'm telling you, God,
Elijah moments.
God was going after me, man. He was going after me. You know, he's giving me
going after your ego, right? Your ego.
Right.
Yeah, that was.
You know, he was showing me verses like in Ezekiel. It says it's like good when a man is young to be ground into the dirt, right? like these are like the verses God's given me. You know, it's like, man, do you like hate me? What's up? I was on the floor, on my face, and I thought of the 24 elders who prostrate before the throne, who throw their crowns at the feet of Jesus. And I said to myself, it will never get better than this.
Yeah.
And it was like, God was like, you're right, Scott. You can have this whenever you want. At the end of time, if you made 100 movies for me that led 1 billion people to Jesus because they watched him, which was my dream, right? That would just be a crown that at the end of time you'd throw at my feet as you worship me.
Yeah.
And there was just so much freedom in that word to me. I mean, it took a long time for it to get all the way in. I still struggle a little bit. But there is such a gift to knowing God is your portion.
Yeah.
And that's where Mary is. When she's at the feet of Jesus weeping, wiping his feet with her hair, seeing what the disciples cannot see because they're still got empire on the brain and their dream on the brain. And I think more than anything, it's that heart that impacts and changes the world.
Yes.
More than anything, even if you're a huge pastor, like with millions of followers and television stations, what really touches people is God.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he's eternal. I mean, like, you know, he eats empires for lunch. You know, like he eats accomplished people for lunch, man. Like, you know, it there's nothing better than being in his presence.
Yeah.
You know? And I think, you know, if I were to say like what's at the core of my ministry, it's helping people get there. Because once they get there, they have everything.
Yeah.
Right. And the things of this world grow strangely dim. Yeah.
That is so powerful. And that's part of what I came across in that book, The Man God Uses, by Oswald J. Smith, that really caught my attention as an 18-year-old boy then. The fact that, you know, what we seek for, like all these things I was seeking for, right? That I wanted as a young man, I wanted to go and be all that and everything. Nothing out of all that, if I had the whole world with a fence around it, can compare to just that simplicity of being surrendered to the Lordship of Jesus and having him being Lord over all and him directing your life and leading you. It was one of the breakthrough things for me because I had to break a relationship then too, when that thing happened, I had to break different things that I was attached to. And I just remember this song that we used to sing. The song says, "Down at your feet, oh Lord, is the most high place. In your presence, Lord, I seek your face." He said, "There's no higher calling. There's no greater honor than to bow down and just be at your feet."
Yeah.
So that's the highest place.
It
the
is.
highest place is that place of surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's where that's what we're created for, and that's where we're even going to end up doing, just like you talked about the 24 elders. So I think the journey that God was, taking you through, and which God is, leading you to take other people through, is to get them to that place where they get to that point, which is the highest place that you can ever be.
Yeah.
But the thing about that place is that when you are prostrate before God, and God, you are at the end of yourself, and dead to self, right? Christ, becoming Lord over your thought, over your ambitions and all that, where they are no longer first. That's when he now begins to speak to you about his own plans, about what he wants you to do, and how he's going to be glorified.
Yeah.
So
it can be so simple. It can be just like call somebody. It can be like you need to spend more time with your kids today, Scott. Right? And that's more precious than anything. Well, it's hearing the voice of God and following him, man. Like that, it really doesn't get any better than that. Like, and so I think that, and so sometimes you do that and you end up in front of masses of people,
sometimes you don't end up in front of masses.
And sometimes you're in hiddenness for 5 years. Nobody even knows who you are. I'll never forget, like, I was mentored by a guy from Uganda. And oh gosh, what is his uncle's name? He's a big preacher in Uganda.
Robert Kayanja?
Yeah, that's the man. Okay, yeah. So this was crazy. Robert Kayanja comes and stays with Drake north of Howard. Like, no joke, man. So I'm walking around with him north of Howard. This is back when we were like the Wild Wild West, man. Like, guys on every corner, prostitute. This is back in the day, man. I go over to Drake's house, and Drake lives like on a drug dealing street. There's Korean people lined up in the stairwell to go see Robert Kayanja. I don't know, I have no idea who this guy is. I walk around with him. People in the neighborhood know who he is, right? Because he's on TLN and
on TBN,
But I remember one night he preached. We went with him south side of Chicago. I don't remember what church. I was sick. He did an offering. I was so broke back in the day, man. I gave him my literally last dollar I think I had in the offering. I mean, it was like just the change in my pocket. And I don't know if I had too much more than that in my bank account. And that night, in the middle of the service, he said, God is telling me, stopping me. God is telling me he is about to mess up the NBA. He's about to disrupt the NBA. I was like, what is this guy talking about? Then we went to the IHOP on Howard Street, Howard and West.
I know the IHOP.
Yeah. So we go over there, and I think that's what that night we went there. He looks at me and he said, Scott, people look at you and they see nothing, right? I wasn't real appreciative of that comment, but he was like, people don't really think much of you when they're looking at you right now. He said, but God is gonna use you. And he gave me $100, man. He just handed me $100. And I was like, well, whatever. That year, the NBA went on strike, man. They lost their right. Like, and I was like, man, if He was right about the NBA, man. He's
But you're right about Scott.
you know, but I don't even know why I just told that story. But but like, yeah, just the his story was like God sent him to America. He was living in a phone booth.
Mm-hmm.
And the day before he left, he went and preached at this one church. I don't know whose church it was. And all these people got healed. And also he became like this celebrity pastor. But he said the poor people used to think we were poor. Right. Right. You know, and yeah, that was just a crazy. I don't know why I'm telling that story.
Wow. Well, somebody needed to hear that. So you don't know why God is bringing it out of your mouth, you know. But, you know, so in terms of how God began to direct your life, after Northwestern and all that, you were called to the inner cities. Tell us about that now. 30 years in Rogers Park.
Yeah. So you know, I grew up in Christian schools, so I was a little bit entitled when it came to scripture. I thought I like knew everything, but I think I was challenged by my campus minister to start reading the Bible. And so I started reading the Bible. And I started bumping all these verses about the poor and like, you can't be my disciple unless you give everything away and give it to the poor. And I was just like, man, what is up with this? Right. And then this guy came to North, you know, and I'm trying to share my faith with everybody at Northwestern. And nobody's buying it. Right. And in fact, they hate evangelicals. Like I didn't know this, you know, I always heard liberals were the bad guys where I grew up, but man, it was very clear to me that right-wing conservatives were the bad guys when I was at Northwestern. And so I was like, why, you know, and so I'm trying to share the 4 spiritual laws, all this stuff, trying to convert my whole dorm. And I lived in the arts dorm, by the way. So like quarter of the dorms homosexual. You know, and I love artists. They were like the coolest people ever. I just love hanging out with them. And we started a prayer group. We prayed every night, you know, but this guy came to campus and he had written this book called American Pictures. And he was from Scandinavia. He drove all around America, hitchhiked around America. And every single one of his chapters, he had a quote from the Old Testament about the poor. And I went to Oregon for a summer and started bumping into homeless people. And God just broke my heart for basically the panhandlers in Evanston. And I remember I was dating this girl at the time. It was like my first girlfriend. And we bumped into a guy, prayed with him at McDonald's. He received Christ, threw his crack pipe away, and introduced me to all the homeless folk in Evanston the next day as his friend. And we started doing Bible study every Sunday and then taking them to church. And God just got a hold of me that way. You know, and then I bumped into a guy named Brian Bakke, whose dad was Ray.
Ray Bakke's mustard seed.
And he started mentoring me, you know, and he would come up to the campus and we'd pray together. And I had this like I was having a guy, you know, all these panhandler guys were showing up at my apartment at like 1 a.m. You know, and I started just doing that kind of ministry, and then moved into Rogers Park. I was actually living with Bob Christian, who was playing for the Chicago Bears at the time. He was our star fullback back when Northwestern wasn't any good, and before the Rose Bowl days. But he was, you know, he ended up in the NFL. He ended up at the Falcons. Retired there, and I wanted to move into the city. I was doing prison ministry with guys. One of the guys said, "My landlord has an opening," and so I moved into this place. And my first roommate was a a guy who was trying to church plant with Polish people. He quickly moved out. My second roommate was a guy I met at Uptown Baptist Church who was living in his car. He was homeless. He had been a ward of the state. And he moved in with me. I said, I'll give you a place for 2 weeks and you got to get a job. He got a job and he became my roommate. What I didn't know was he was a sex addict. And I was telling anybody who was my roommate, I said, we let homeless guys stay with us here. You got to be okay with that if you're going to live with me. And so there was a guy who was part of our Bible study and he was staying over. And one day this woman came to our door and she's ringing the doorbell. She's like going crazy. And this kid had like walked in and walked out the back door. I was like, what is she yelling about? And the guy who was staying with us, he said, she's a prostitute, Scott. I was like, what? No, she's not a prostitute. He goes, yeah, she is. She's about to get a brick and she's going to throw it through your front window. And I was like, are you for real? And sure enough, she walked across the street, grabbed a brick and came and like what? So my roommates from upstairs and me who were Christians, we come down, we talk to her. I'll never forget one of my guys upstairs and she jumps in the cab and rides away. He like slams his hand on the cab. It's like, Jesus loves you, right? Like as she drives away. And then this kid comes back and I'm like, God, so we had a visitor after you left. Do you want to explain something to us? And he started telling me this whole story. He was a ward of the state. Once he was out of DCFS, they put them up in an apartment, and the prostitutes started going after him, right? And so he ended up with that, and so that was just like kind of the beginning of like this whole adventure. My first 5 years in the neighborhood, a single mom moved in below me. This was before cell phones. Her family. Her and her daughters would come up and borrow our phone. I'm just out of college, so our door is open. They're coming in and out of our apartment. It was crazy. But then I found out that she was addicted to crack. She came to me in tears and was like, Scott, you got to help me. I'm going to lose my kids. Young men. I remember one night I bumped into two young guys. They're selling newspapers. 12 years old. You want to buy a paper? Want to buy a paper? God says, take them down to Uptown to the Monday night meal and buy them $20 worth of groceries afterwards. So I do that. Brian drives me back up. We go to this grocery store. They each buy $10 worth of stuff. It was my last $20. Because I was like substitute teaching. I was doing jobs, mostly like the least amount of work I could so I could dedicate myself to ministry. And then these guys, another night I bump into them. They'd be out till like 1 a.m. I bump into them at 11 o'clock at night. They came, I walked with them, talked with them, led them to the Lord, prayed they received the Holy Spirit. They fell on the floor of my apartment. I thought, I am going to go to jail. Like if they tell their parents, like this white guy brought us into his apartment and we fell on the floor and he put his hand on us, was praying we'd receive the Holy Spirit. I was like, this is going to be a weird story, right? They start bringing their friends over to my house on Sunday mornings.
Wow.
Well, pretty soon I've got 15, 20 kids from the neighborhood jumping on the bus. We're taking them to church. So I remember one morning I've got like 6 guys off the street who are sleeping there, and 13 kids show up and we all have pancakes for breakfast together before we all go to church together. It was just like this crazy time. And in the midst of all this, my church just does not know what to do with me. They're like, they won't make me a leader. They won't really get behind it. They're telling people, I know Scott does that, but nobody else should do that. It's way too dangerous. I had one guy lock me in my own apartment. I had to call my best friend and have him call the police, just all kinds of crazy stuff was happening all the time. And it was like adventures with Jesus, man, but also broke. Like, how are we going to pay rent? Where's the money going to come from? All these miraculous show up at the last minute stories, so I did that about 5 or 6 years. And then I started the not-for-profit, which was Starfish Studios.
Okay.
And met Moon just a little bit after that.
I was going to ask, how did you meet Moon? Where? I
met her at a prayer meeting.
Okay, that's good. That's a good place to meet.
Yeah. I met her at a prayer meeting. Yeah, that's the best place to meet women. That's my advice to everybody. But I met her at Uptown Baptist Church. I was one of those guys that didn't have very good success rate with women. I had unrequited love down really, really well. And when I started falling for her, I remember God said, you need to call her and ask her out. And I've like approached, I'm talking to drug dealers. I'm casting demons out of people in my living room. One of the scariest things I ever did in my life was to call her to ask her out.
They're more scared of her than the demons.
Man, I was shaking all over and asked her out. And she told me our second date that her dream all her life was to live in an inner city community and do that.
And that's what she's doing now.
Yeah.
I know I got an email from her yesterday, and it was about, people in need, immigrants and all that. That's what she's doing.
Yeah. I felt like there were a lot of guys after her, and once I knew what her story was, I was like, I'm the guy for her. Like, somebody else wants to do this, and I had never met a girl who wanted to do it. Like it was like I remember one girl said, every other guy's picked me up in his car. Like, do you even have health insurance? Like, what's up with you? There were some hard times, brother, man.
Are you going somewhere? Are you,
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank God for Moon,
God for Moon.
Bringing her and the vision and everything just merging. Wow. So you're doing that. And, how did you get into pastoring?
That's so funny. All right. So I've never thought of myself as a pastor. Maybe a prophet, right? Maybe like John the Baptist. I mean, some people, I think back in the day, because I look like a homeless person, thought of me as John the Baptist, right? Like I kind of look like someone who probably ate locusts, and
Cut the Baptist.
Yeah. And I was like a street guy. I was like literally out on the street all the time with homeless guys.
You had a street pastor.
Yeah. And but like nobody, like, yeah. So anyways, kind of what happened was I did this ministry for about 11 years, Starfish Studios, but we really were the not-for-profit part of not-for-profit. Like we were broke, it's so bad because when you met me, it was the time I had just got this huge donation. From the day we were married to 6 months later, we didn't get a single dime.
Wow.
Right? And so we were living below poverty like half our marriage. And then she got pregnant with our first son. and she was basically like, I cannot do this anymore. And so
Mhm.
I quit the not-for-profit and got a job at Breakthrough as a communications guy there.
Mhm.
And I did that for about a year and a half, 2 years.
Mhm.
Found out like I am very much an entrepreneur and I'm not the best employee in the world. Because I've always got a vision and I'm always trying to make wherever I am fit the vision.
Mhm.
As you know, God bless Breakthrough. They were very patient with me. But then I left that to start my video company, Change Media Group, with a friend of mine who was a volunteer with Starfish Studios. He was an on-air reporter.
Okay.
But we were trying to start basically like Vice, you
Okay.
know, before there was a Vice, we had
Mhm.
that idea. So we were trying to raise money, but it was the recession. I mean, we literally started the business the year of the recession.
Okay.
And so we were meeting with people and they were like, we're not getting any
Not this,
money.
not this year, not this time.
We went through all our savings. Oh man, Pejalon, we've been through it like when it comes to money, you know, and you know, the church is taking care of us, all this craziness. But then my business started to pick up a little bit. I finally got to a point where I said, God, I told Moon I'll either make this amount of money a month or I'll get a real job, a 9-to-5 job. And then I started making pretty much that a month after that. I was like, man, I should have thought of this prayer 10 years ago. You know, and so yeah, I was just doing that. And, you know, part of my story is I've been through 3 church plants in Rogers Park.
Mm.
And so what I started noticing was churches would come, they'd be there for about 3 years and they'd leave.
Mm.
And then this one church came, they were like a church planting network.
Mm.
And I'm not gonna pick on them, but they came. There was a couple that very gifted at evangelism, and they basically started a church accidentally with an Alpha course here in Rogers Park, and we joined that. And they were for real. They were really taking care of people, and so we were part of that. But then they got burnt out, and the church planting network sent like a church planting pastor, and he was here for about 4 months.
I didn't got burned out.
And decided he wanted to do the Tim Keller thing and find the Manhattan of Chicago, and that's where he wanted to start the church. And so he literally said, you know, we're going to move to Lincoln Park because that's where there's more stable families, meaning that's where there's more people with money that can support the church. And I God told me stay with him for a year. I mean, I was mad at this guy, to be honest, and because I felt like finally maybe we'll have a church here, because the first church died, you know, and then the second one, now they're moving, but I stuck with him for a year, and I heard his strategy, and it was like get to 100 people, we focus on professionals, and I started putting 2 and 2 together, and I realized most church planning strategies discriminate against the poor.
Yep.
Not, you know, it's just you have to go after professionals in order to get paid as a pastor, and I really do think it really helps to have someone full time to grow something, right? Because a church plant's a lot like a business. It's kind of hard to do.
There's a business side of it.
Yeah. Well, it's just hard to do something half part-time, or you end up working 100 hours a week and your family life goes down the drain or whatever, right? It's a bad equation. Plus,
you know what you're speaking to me. I mean, what's coming to me as you're telling your story and all that. And I think this will be very helpful for those who are watching. No matter what we're called to do, it doesn't matter whether it's media, whether it's pastoring. we have to deal with the money issue. If we don't confront the money issue the right way, like the way of God, right? We're going to get to a point where you're going to be tempted to do it the wrong way. Some people will just quit. Some people will move based on money. Money will become what is leading them, no longer the Holy Spirit. But one of the things that I believe is that there is a correct way to money. And a lot of people avoid it because we've been taught in the church some things about money. And I've looked at it and I've seen a lot of people that either been derailed by money or been stopped. They have dreams, they have all that, but they just don't know the business side or how to get the money side. And I believe that is one of those things that I feel called to do, to help people know how to get resources for what they've been called to do, because I believe it's something that Jesus had it. He had the resources for the ministry. He had all that. And it's something that he wants us, to know. So thank you for bringing that up, because that's a very important aspect. First, from your own story, the different thing you went through, then even all these pastors that are quitting and all that.
Yeah. They burn out.
And families, what about families that they get separated or broken because they started with a dream, but the money thing just broke everything, because the wife probably has stayed there for a long time. The kids are now there, and then I don't think that's God's perfect will for us.
Yeah, it's hard. It's super hard. And our marriage really went, to some hard places because of that, and just your own self-image as a man when you can't take care of your family is really hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we're just kind of coming out of that. I mean, I'm still learning about that still. So I'm glad that's your call and you're my friend.
Yeah, seriously. Because I love this street pastor part of you. That I need to learn that from you. I need to get that. Like just that. But I tell you, I know some stuff about money.
Yeah. No, it's good. Yeah. So I mean, what happened was, I'm running this business, and then and really super discouraged, right? So I'd done discipleship with all these kids in the neighborhood, poured out my life for almost 20 years. And kids that I poured my life into are on the corner selling drugs. I'm hearing they're the ones doing the shooting, they're robbing people. And everybody's gone, Pastor Lon. Like everybody got up and left.
Wow.
You
mean the churches, right? They left. Yeah.
Yeah. And we even finally started a house church, and then one of our members got cancer and died. One of our leaders, a single mom, and we ended up becoming guardian of her son. I mean, that was super hard, so we were in just a really hard place. And then God started to move. And I literally was starting to wonder, am I just like a grumpy, old, crotchety, stubborn man that just can't let go? Because it's like nobody's in the neighborhood. Everybody keeps coming and leaving. You're broke. Why are you still here? and we started a prayer meeting on Monday nights with this lady who had a boxing ministry in Englewood. And on those Monday nights, I'll never forget, God used to tell me every Monday, you're right where I want you to be. And I mean, the voice of God, man, can keep you when it doesn't make sense.
It's like Ezekiel in the valley of dry bones.
Yeah. And so I'm heartbroken. I'm walking around the neighborhood feeling like I got a knife in my chest. I am just almost in despair. And like, God, when are you going to reach these young men? And then I start hearing there's a guy doing a Bible study with all the gang guys. He wears a do-rag. The only guy I know with a do-rag is the guy who runs the soup kitchen. I'm like, I don't think he's doing it. And then one of the guys who was doing the house church with us said, yeah, you got to meet him. So I meet him, we talk. He hears my story and he's like, you know all these guys? I was like, I've known them for 20 years. He's like, you got to come to my Bible study. I show up at his Bible study. Every drug dealer and gang leader in the neighborhood is in his living room.
Wow.
And one of the main guys is like weeping one night. He had gone to a club, was about to, he got in an argument with somebody, he was like, you know, I got in an argument. I went to my car, you know, to get my 64 clip. I'm sitting there. I didn't even know you could have a 64 clip, right? He's like, I passed out. When I woke up, I was driving home, and he just starts weeping in front of 30 guys from the neighborhood.
Wow.
The lead gang guy from our community was like in his 40s. Like, hey guys, this ish is for real. He didn't say ish, but he's like, this is what I always wanted for you, but Brother Jay is doing it. And Brother Jay is the guy who started the Bible study. That Bible study started to attract Park to our neighborhood, started to attract Willow Creek to our neighborhood. Everybody's coming to this Bible study, and I knew those Monday night prayer meetings was the prayer, intercession, and the heartbreak that God had in me. What was a part of why that broke out. And so all of a sudden, this one year, there had been almost no Bible believing, preaching, teaching churches in Rogers Park. And all of a sudden, New Life Covenant, New Life Community, and Park Community Church, and a couple other churches, you know, that aren't like as well known, all showed up in our community. And all of a sudden, I went from crazy, crotchety, John the Baptist, the Baptist. Yeah, to have an Einsteins like you say, hey, I wanna pick your brain about Rogers Park because you've been here so long, you know, and all of a sudden I bet Doc Feuder, you know, all of a sudden networks started opening up.
Wow.
And so all this stuff started happening, and so Park decided to plant a church. I told them, look, man, we don't need another white guy in charge in Rogers Park, right? Like all of my mentor, Brian, says all the ministries in Chicago look like plantations. You know, he's like, you got all these like white people that parachute in, and all the black people work for them, but it's like a bad look, you know. And so I was like, I told Park, you know, unless you have 4 or 5 black families, you have a black pastor, like I'm not interested in being a part of it, because they'll just think we're there for the folks that came in with it, kind of the gentrification.
Yeah.
And so that ended up happening. I hired a pastor from Philadelphia, and we jumped into it. And so I started basically, like, God called me to be the prayer guy. And he see how much time we got. This is my last story. All right. So God called me to be the prayer guy. He showed me that Samuel, the story of Samuel, where the people, when the Philistines came, they just asked Samuel to pray. And God was showing me that's the leadership I want in Chicago. I want a prayer leadership, not anything else. And so they put me in charge of prayer. And the week after they put me in charge of prayer, God told me, don't go to church for the next 4 weeks, right? And this pastor, he's not charismatic. He's, you know, and I said, we got to start meeting together because, you know, you and I are coming from different places. You know, I'm a charismatic, you're not. I want to make sure what I teach in prayer is like okay with you. So we started meeting. So God told me, start a prayer meeting from 7 to 9, because we were doing setup for our church from 9 to 10:30. I said, God, no one is going to come to a 7 to 9 a.m. prayer meeting. No one. And I was right. Right. And, but God said, you're not starting a prayer meeting. You are changing the mindset about prayer. I want a church that spends more time in the prayer setup than in the actual setup. And that in that prayer time, because I was by myself, and I'd learned from this guy named John Melinde to read 5 to 10 chapters of scripture in your prayer time. God began to dump revelation on me like never before. And eventually the pastor left. And when he left, he said, I'm going to tell Park, I don't think they should hire somebody else. I think you, Brother Jay, and this guy named Kevin, who grew up in Cabrini, should be the ones who lead the church. And all of a sudden, I was a pastor, basically. Wow. That's
Wow. What a story. What a story. I mean, there's just so many things to pick from your story and learn from your story. I mean, first of all, just the fact that God can call someone and put them, just like I said, told Ezekiel to be the valley of the dry bones and prophesy and all that. Sometimes God will call someone and you are just there and it's like everything is dry all around you. You too, sometimes you see the dryness and you feel dry too. But God actually wants somebody that will stay, because many people will come and go, right? But God wants someone that will stay. And then in staying there, begin to pray, just be a representative, be the edge, make up the edge and doing all that. And the time now comes when the prayers and the tears and all those things of many years will start showing up and people will not even know the roots. So I actually believe, because I don't believe I just meet people by accident. Like, for example, when we're coming to Rogers Park, you came to my mind to call you and to talk to you. And I remember, we met, and, since then, I believe your prayers, part of your prayers is what brought us to Rogers Park, because I had to this side, I had it was not even on my mind at all. It wasn't on my mind. I wasn't thinking about it. But something began to happen to me, right there on the South. Like, a lot of things that I had passions for and all that, I was like sold out into it. It's like that passion started lifting. And then I was wondering, like, why God was allowing certain things. Like, He didn't allow me to settle and all that until one day I had a one-day prayer. Like, I went to pray for one day. That's when the Holy Spirit told me, I think around the 7 p.m. mark or so, the Holy Spirit told me that actually, I don't want you to be on this side anymore. I need you and your family to move to the other side, because there's something that I have for you. That's the reason why we moved. We had to uproot our kids, uproot different things, and move over here. Yeah. And part of the instruction as we move was to talk to you. So I believe that your prayers over these years and labors and all that, and look at some of the things that we've been able to do. I met, Howard area through you and your wife, your Chicago, just the different things, the collaborations, Black Lives Matter, all those marches that we did in the summer and everything. And it's not just me, but, you talked about Park and other people too. Yeah. So I just wanted to tell you that, God put it here and preserved it.
20 years, brother, of sitting here feeling like by ourselves, literally praying. I can't tell you how many times in prayer meetings I prayed, Lord, send us more workers from the north, the south, the east, and the west.
Wow.
And they are coming now, bro. They are coming from everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it blows me away. And I think, honestly, when that happened, remember I was talking about the Seth Meyers stuff and all that. When this happened, it made me realize I wasn't crazy.
Yeah.
That God did have a purpose and a plan, and He had kept me in it until, and that I was a part of something that was so important, to the heart of God.
Yeah.
And that was just such an honor and a privilege to realize that,
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, and it's just been so exciting, right? Like what God is doing up here, because there's a sense of oneness with the
Yeah.
church up here, where I really do feel like I look at you as my co-pastor. I look at Jason as my co-pastor and Galen as my co-pastor, right? Like, and and that's not a pretend thing. That's I feel like everybody feels like that up here.
Yes. Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think it's part of what God is doing up here on the north side.
Yeah.
Is teaching us about that. You know?
Yeah. I wanted you to wrap up, because of that, wrap up with Night Church. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Night Church. Quick.
Yeah. So, you know, like I said, I've really felt like God called us to pray. And so we were doing these prayer meetings every morning, Sunday morning, 7 to 9. And we kept doing that. And one morning I was there in prayer and God gave me this verse. Woe to those, it's Isaiah 5:11, 11 through 15 or 14, I think. Woe to those who rise early in the morning, that they may run after strong drink, who tarry late into the evening as wine inflames them. They have lyre and harp, tambourine and flute and wine at their feasts, but they do not regard the deeds of the Lord or see the works of his hands. Therefore, my people go into exile for lack of knowledge. Their honored men go hungry. Their multitude is parched with thirst. Therefore, Sheol has enlarged its appetite and opened its mouth beyond measure. And Sheol is death.
Yeah.
And we have lost a lot of young men in our neighborhood. For whatever reason, we see a lot of murder. Even though we're kind of gentrifying, you look at Rogers Park, you know, you can't understand. And so I was really wrestling with that. But what came to my mind was God wanted to win the weekend. That the kind of the club scene and the party culture is really what is killing, especially our low income neighborhoods. Right? Yeah. The revelry, you know, and you hate that you kind of sound like a square saying that, you know, that sounds like the old school preacher, you know, like don't smoke, don't drink, don't dance, you know. But I read this, I was like, you know what? We've been praying, God, you would show us why the murder. And I felt like this is what he showed me. And what he was telling me was, I want you to do church to interrupt, to basically create an alternate party. Yeah. Right. And it was based a lot on the prayer altar idea, the peace campaign idea, of bringing God's presence into dark places. Yeah. And so, you know, I was planning to do it. We wanted to get a space and do it year round, Fridays and Saturdays, do night church. I wanted to do open mic and all this kind of stuff, right? Then COVID happened and I just put it on hold. I was trying to raise money, but God had told me this summer, I want you to start night church. Your priority is night church. Yeah. And then the week before 4th of July, we had 7 people shot in one weekend. And 2 died. And I was like, we got to move. And if it's just 2 of us, it'll just be 2 of us. So I just put together a spreadsheet, threw it out and said, hey guys, pick a night. I'm picking Mondays. Who's going to pick Tuesday? Who's going to pick Wednesday? Who's going to pick Saturday? We ended up with almost 5 nights a week. Yeah. Being out there, and it was usually only 2 of us, 2 or 3 of us at a time. But about 7 or 8 churches participated, and that's what we did. So we're trying to mobilize this year, to get a lot more churches involved. And the idea is just, you know, do whatever God shows you to do. Just get out there and be out there. I mean, Pastor Lon, the one night we weren't out one week was the night a guy got shot. There's something when we're there. Yeah. And you know, hey, the white privilege, it works in that context because the Genghis get a little bit more nervous when white people are around. They're worried that if something happens, they're going to get a little bit more heat. You know, it's one chance where we can kind of use it.
Yeah.
For good.
Yeah.
You know, but mostly, like, honestly, it
Yeah.
is the very presence of God that we bring with us that I think changes things around. And I think we're just scratching the surface on it, but that's what Night Church is about.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. I love this conversation. It's been deep, you know, mellow, but a lot of great stuff just coming out. And as you know, you were just talking, I was just, you know, seeing possibilities and possibilities. So we'll be talking some more, you know.
Yes,
And
brother.
I
Yeah.
still, like what I said at the beginning, the movie, the studio is not, you know, that's not the end of it.
Yeah.
So it's still there in the picture.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk some more. We just bought a property in Rogers Park, actually.
You
So,
did?
yes, I'll show you just a multi-family stuff, you know. Yeah, like a 3-level. So I'll show you, and you know, maybe you can help us have dream some things in that one too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so we need to.
We're gonna get after it this summer, brother.
Yes, and your wife is also already a partner, you know, Moon.
Man, she's
So
like,
yeah, I just believe
I am now Mr. Moon. I've been here longer than her, but now I bump into people and they're like, "Oh, you're Moon's husband."
Moon's husband. Okay, so she introduces herself as Scott's wife. So
Yeah.
that's balanced. Yeah. So really, I just feel I you know, some things became clearer to me as we're talking, as you know, the role that God had you to play, like a Hannah was that woman that was praying for the Messiah, for, you know, like people that God will just put somewhere to be praying until God begins to move in a particular area. So that's been a great story. You're a man of peace for Rogers Park and the area. And thank God for what God is now. God is expanding that thing, your faithfulness. God is expanding and spreading it to the city and even beyond now, beyond the city to the nations, as you will see. You know, so that's what is going on right now. So I really appreciate you for staying there when, you know, it was tough and people were quitting, for going through all that, you know, and just staying there. God has something for you. And it's just, I believe that you are in a phase right now where the seed that has been planted in that place, and he said, except a corn of wheat fall to the ground and die, it abides alone. But if it dies, it will bring forth much fruit. So you went through that death process, but the goal is not so that you remain buried. It's because there are fruits, trees, and things that are going to come out, and that's part of what you are beginning to see, you know, going on right now. But it's just beginning. So I really appreciate you for coming on to share your story.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. I
Yeah.
love hanging out with you. So.
Yeah, so we need to fix our next appointment so that we get to meet. We have a lot to talk about, and I have some things I want to show you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, can you be there Saturday? You gonna be there Saturday? I go
Saturday.
You're accountable to all the nations of the world, like
leading lights training.
Oh,
so we have one starting this Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this weekend and next weekend. So I'm going to be swamped for the 2 weekends.
Yeah.
But somewhere during the week, I have some leeway. But if that doesn't happen, we'll catch up after the 2 weeks. But we'll talk and fix them. But we need to meet, you know.
Yeah, let's do it.
Meet at that property.
Yeah.
And, and then
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome.
I've got some wonderful plans for your life too, brother.
I surrender to you, man.
Yeah. I got a few things I need to talk to you about.
I surrender to you. Wow, thank you. Well, we were so lost in our discussion that we didn't allow people to ask questions. So it's too late now. So
all right.
But we just want to thank all the audience. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being part of this conversation and your comments and everything. We appreciate you. Thank you, Pastor Scott, for coming.
Thank you.
We're going to do more of this. So
Okay. All
we're going to
right.
do more of this. Yeah. So
Yeah, I love it.
we will sign off like this today, and we'll be back. Well, tomorrow, going to be back again with another guest, and it's going to be another powerful story that is going to just pick up from where we stopped today and just, go on further. So I want to appreciate you all for joining us. God bless you all, and bye-bye from Scott and I. We will see you again later. Scott is coming back, definitely. In fact, he's going to host this. I saw him hosting this show. So watch out for that.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Pastor Len.